On this episode of the Flash Traffic Podcast, we sit down with special guest Colonel Joe Junguzza, an armor officer who worked on the Army War College's Ukraine Integrated Research Project. We discuss the concept of mission command, tanks on the modern battlefield, the Ginsu Hellfire missile, and more. Okay, let's go.
Conflict, politics, military-industrial complex, technology, war. The Flash Traffic Podcast.
Of warfare forever.
But now it's going to be West Point Friday, so...
Now it's West Point Friday.
Oh, good
Yes.
Lord.
Eric, you'll
This
get to
isn't
meet
going
so
well.
many fine West Pointers.
This isn't going well.
It's going to be so much fun.
Boy.
It was supposed to be Tank Top Friday because when we have a guest in honor of Dr. Jahara Matisek, when we wore tank tops that one War Week Friday, but Joe got vetoed with the tank top.
Got vetoed.
And I got a special one that says, America. So, yes, I got a special tank top just for this occasion. If you're listening on Spotify, it's got an eagle, Ben Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson on the front. So,
Well, those guys are cool.
yeah, they're the Fantastic Four.
Oh,
FORE.
jeez.
Yeah, let's talk about Mission Command because this is Joe's specialty. When you were a fine student at the Army War College, this was your thesis for the year. So, Mission Command, Joe, why don't you explain it? Because it's not as simple as I understand reading your writings. It's not as simple as just giving your subordinates agencies or discretion to do what they need to do when they need to do it. It's more complex than that.
Yeah, so let me take a step back and tell you what it was. So Dr. Noggle, who you've had on the show before, he does for the first year of the war in Ukraine and the second year in the war in Ukraine, what he did was he got a bunch of students together and they did what was called an integrated research project. So normally when you get to the end of your war college experience, you can take the equivalent of like a shop class elective or something, or you can take the painful route and write a paper, or you can take the really painful route and be part of one of these research projects. So my instructor, Colonel Kelly Lolito, she approached me and said, hey, this might be up your alley. Dr. Noggle is putting a team together. And so basically what someone does is they'll talk about one chapter will be on fires, one chapter will be on maneuver, logistics, different, cyber. And so everybody has a different chapter. And the idea was, what lessons can we learn as an American Army from what's going on in Ukraine? Now, obviously, not all of it is going to carry over, but each of us approached it from the point of view of, okay, what's going on? It's the first LSCO, large-scale combat operation, since World War II. So let's take a look at it and see what we can learn. And in the Army Reserves, I probably spent the better part of 10 years training units in Mission Command. And so it's one of those, I don't say it's a complicated, but it's more of a theory than what we used to call battle operating systems, if you remember those. And so what Mission Command is, it is a philosophy of how you control your forces. And so for most people who have sort of a very cursory understanding of Mission Command, they think it's giving your subordinates more decision making, right? And typically, what the U.S. Army does very well is we empower down, right? So we have our NCOs. I think most people would understand that probably the one defining characteristic of the U.S. Army is this NCO Corps and its ability for NCOs to make decisions at their level, right? Not everything needs to be decided by an officer. And so they came up with this philosophy called Mission Command, which is not solely about letting the most decisions at the lowest level. Like a friend of ours, I told him about the article and he's like, yeah, Mission Command, we need more of it. And that's not really like how Mission Command works. What Mission Command is it's the appropriate level of control for the type of operation and forces, right? So it's not so much, hey, Tony Tingle, go out and do whatever you need to do. You make all your decisions, right? That is, depending on what you're doing, appropriate. But on the other hand, depending on other situations, you have to have tighter control. So I'll give you an example. In Vietnam, we had LRPs, right? Long range reconnaissance, or long range patrols, right? It's 2 or 3 guys. They would like go out in the jungle. You know, they'd go find, and basically they were given a mandate of go find the enemy, find out where they are. If you want to kill some, great. If you don't, fine. But it was kind of the extreme edge of mission command. Those 3 guys would go out and decide what they were going to do, and they had a very broad-based mission. And on the other end of mission command, you have, let's call it a combined arms breach of a minefield, right? So now you have to synchronize artillery, the engineers, the smoke, the armor, the clearing, the infantry assault, right? And all of that has to be coordinated and synchronized. Everything has to be timed. And so an operation like that, you need to have a lot more control. So the Army has a manual for everything. And in the Army Manual on Mission Command, they have these things that they call levels of control. So you would look at it and you determine how much control do I have to have over my forces? Well, that's going to depend on a couple of different things. It's the situation, right? What you're trying to do, but also like the kind of unit you have, the level of training, how much you trust them. You know, do their leaders know what they're doing? So then let's take this and you apply it to Ukraine, right? So 2022, the Ukrainians are running around and it's like, go kill Russians, right? If you see a convoy, stop it, blow it up, take their ammo, use that ammo, go kill more Russians, right? So it worked very well for the Ukrainian army because, as I discussed later, culturally, that fit more with their society, right? And then the Russians, on the other hand, are terrible at that, right? The Russians have the term, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down, right? And so their society and the way they run things is very autocratic. So now the Ukrainians are ready to do the counteroffensive, and the Russians are literally in division-sized defensive positions, right? Their defensive positions are division-sized sectors behind a mile of mines. Now you have very poorly trained units. They're thrown together. They don't have good cohesion. You don't trust them to make decisions. And so the Russians were better at highly coordinated, strict control over their forces because they're sitting there in a defense. And, so if you're in a defense, the division level fires, that decision's getting made at a much higher level as when you call artillery. And the Ukrainians, on the other hand, now that you're doing what is arguably the single most complicated military operation, which is like a river crossing or a breach, you need that higher level of control. And the Ukrainians just didn't have it. They didn't have the staff. They didn't have the training. That is the graduate level military operations. So it's not a bunch of squads running around just killing Russians when you see them and you're looking for targets of opportunity. That's great when you're in your backyard and your buddy calls you up and he says, hey, there's Russians crossing that road. Let's go shoot them, right?
Yep.
You're doing a combined arms breach. You need that high level of control. So in 2023, the problem they were running into was that the Russians were really good at controlled high level. And when I say really good, given the quality of their forces, they were very effective because they maintained a very high level of control. And the Ukrainians were not as effective when they required it. Then you see things like when the Ukrainians invaded Kursk, much more freewheeling, much more decisions made on the fly. They had some very good early successes. Whereas the Russians, as soon as they got out of their comfort zone and you needed that decision at the lower level, I think in the example I use, like the east bank of the Dnipro River, Avdiivka.
of the Yivka.
Yes, I knew you'd have it there. So like once the initial assault goes, and now you need them to make decisions at a lower level. The Russians were terrible at it, right? When the Ukrainians got on the east bank of the Dnieper River, the Russians were not able to, because they were not expecting that. So you needed more freewheeling decisions at the lower level. And what you've noticed is that the Russians, when their subordinate, when their low-level commanders need to make a decision, they are not good at it. Now, moving forward, right, the tricky part is which is easier to adjust, right? Will the Ukrainians be able to develop the skill set to do highly coordinated operations before the war is over? Or will the Russians basically revamp their society so that people can make decisions at a lower level? Mm. I'll be honest, I don't know the answer. My guess is it is easier to train a staff on how to do coordinated operations than it is to get the Russians to put a lot of faith and trust in their subordinates, right? Mm-hmm. So if you look at those two things, which is going to change, I'll be honest with you, my bet is on the training. The Russians, if you look at level of trust, okay, shared understanding, there's a big one. When the Russians invaded, right, they did not have shared understanding, meaning the troops that went there, they didn't understand what they were going to get into. They were told, just drive to this area and get there. Don't worry about anything else. Nobody, and by all reports, until a couple of hours before the invasion, nobody had any idea what they were going to do. That is a very low level of shared understanding. It seems crazy to us in the U.S. Army because shared understanding is a key. We have the leader, 9 steps and MDMP. Like shared understanding is a huge part of how we operate. And so it's an anathema to us to see just, hey, go in and invade the country, get to this spot, and don't stop for anything. That's crazy. But for the Russians, oddly enough, that was actually the appropriate level of control. Now, it obviously didn't work out very well, but that's the appropriate level of control. So I think when I wrote the chapter, I was kind of expecting to say Ukrainians are great and Russians were terrible. But oddly enough, I came out with Ukrainians are great at one end of the spectrum. The Russians were better at the other end of the spectrum. And both sides struggled to do the opposite. And I think that's the same. I was listening to your podcast a couple of days ago where you talked about nobody desynchronizes the frequencies with the drones, right? You said it was like a mess. Like everybody just picks their own frequency.
Sure.
Well, I mean, that's mission command, right? So if you're going to have a number of drones operating in the same sector, by definition, that requires a higher level of control on what frequencies. So you would say, okay, Unit A, you're going to use this range of frequencies. Unit B, you're going to use this range of frequencies. That is exactly what a staff at higher echelons is there to do. Now, I understand electronic warfare is not a simple thing. It's chess, not checkers. But you're never going to be able to tackle that if you have guys at squad level basically deciding what frequencies they're going to use on their drones, and the people next to them may decide, well, we love that frequency too. And so you need that higher level of control. But, the Prussians were onto something when they developed the staff. And, anyone who served in the military hates being on staff. They hate staff officers. It's almost like a requirement, right? You love command, you hate all things staff, but there's something to it, and it's pretty important. And if you can't do it, you need a staff, and the staff needs to know what they're doing. And without it, you're going to struggle for that higher level of coordinated attacks. So that was the article or the chapter in a nutshell.
This is the fateful Ukrainian assault on the Saravikin defenses in the summer of 2023. So June 2023, the 33rd Brigade and the 47th Mech Brigade assaulted in the Zaporizhia Oblast in a place called Mala Takhmachka. And this is the famous picture of the Leopard tanks, the Bradleys, the Abrams, all this stuff getting seriously messed up. And just like you said, they don't have divisions or corps in the Ukrainian army. So to coordinate at that level, and this was basically a division minus level assault, combined arms assault. Now you might say, well, yeah, but there was some extenuating circumstances, like they didn't have an air force. Okay, an air force, Ukrainian air force would have done a great service to these guys in terms of suppressing observation on the minefields, so they could, conduct mine clearing operations. I tell this story. One of the guys said the biggest problem with this assault, this famous failed quasi-combined arms assault by the Ukrainians, was that the grass had grown so high in the last year, and it completely covered the TM62 anti-tank mines and the anti-personnel mines, so they couldn't see it. And so they're trying to clear mines. They were using thermal gradients in the morning and in the evening to try to pick out the mines. They were doing all these different techniques. They were trying to demine with drones. They were trying to send in small drones in there, land drones. But the bottom line is they got their ass kicked. And the Ukrainians blame the United States, because the Ukrainians say we were pushing combined arms warfare on them. Let us do it our way. We're not going to do it the Western way. And I think they're completely soured on that now. So you mentioned, what do you think moving forward? What do you think the Ukrainians are going to do? Are they going to, increase their staff training so they can do large maneuver operations? Or are they just going to go to ground? And I would tell you that I think they're just going to go to ground. I think they are set in the defense now. They have the wall of drones. Their mindset is now we are going to be defensive. And I'm not talking the quintessential active defense where you take advantage of failed assaults, because we have not seen that. Have you seen that? Any reports of there's approximately 185 assaults going on at any given time in Ukraine per day. Have you heard of massive counterattacks by the Ukrainians taking advantage of failed assaults? No. Mostly these columns die 15 kilometers out, and they're not going to conduct a massive maneuver assault because 10 guys on mopeds came at the trenches. I get that. But I think their perspective now is we're going to ground. We're going to kill as many Russians as we can. We're going to slowly trade space for time and bodies. And that's the plan. We're never going to try to,
And that may be, so there, a couple things, right? And one comment I'll make on this picture, which may not be specifically about Mission Command, but what I will say is, look, the
tank is dead. Are you going to say the tank is dead?
We're gonna talk about
Tank is dead.
We'll have that conversation here in a second.
Okay.
But
yes,
one thing I would say is this: there is never, ever a reason not to have a well-developed staff, no matter what kind of warfare, whether it's attritional, whether it's defensive in nature. You absolutely need to have a staff and echelon coordination in order to do anything effectively beyond the platoon and company level, right? So even if they said, okay, look, we're going to fight a defensive war, a la World War I, we're not crossing no man's land, right? We're just going to stay in the trenches. Yeah, that's great. That's fine. And you know what? That's probably not a bad idea. However, to your point, the way you successfully conduct a defense like that is the ability to say, okay, this battalion that's defending, we have a combined arms reserve. And look, I understand that they're not going heavily mechanized, but you would have a reserve in a division level area that you would flex to an area that's being attacked. And I'm not seeing that, right? So you can absolutely make the argument of, look, we're not doing these large mechanized assaults against an entrenched defense. It just doesn't work in this battle area. I get it. That's fine. That still does not excuse the lack of staff and the lack of ability to coordinate at echelon. Now, are they going to, are they going to do core level maneuvers with divisions as your operating maneuver things? No, probably not. I don't think the world ever gets to that point. But you have to, even in the defense, get out of the mode of a brigade controlling 2 companies at a time, right? A brigade has to be controlling battalions. Battalions have to be controlling companies. And even in the defense, even in an entrenched defense, you still need that higher level coordination, whether it's, you have an S4 or a G4, they got to resupply, right? I mean, like all these things need to happen regardless of the type of fighting that you're doing. It's still more coordination, or the ability to coordinate is absolutely essential in warfare. Even if the type of operation at that point doesn't necessarily need it, you need to be able to do it. And right now, if unfortunately their lesson learned is high levels of coordination are somehow counterproductive in a large-scale combat operation, that is not the lesson to take from this, right? How they fight is up to them, right? They're the ones fighting. I'm not going to sit here on a keyboard and tell them like, this is how you should be conducting assaults. No. But what I will say is your ability to coordinate at higher levels is an absolutely fundamental aspect of warfare, whether you are Napoleon, the Prussians, Patton, or the Ukrainians. You need that. Put it this way, in all of warfare, that ability to coordinate higher levels of forces has never, ever been absent from successful warfare, ever. And this warfare will be no different. Now, one thing I will say about the tank is dead.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm here all week.
No, it is. No, that's a great observation. You're right.
Yeah, and before we go to tank is dead, let me make one comment about that. And it's not that the Ukrainians don't want, higher level coordination, MDMP, because they do get some of that in Interflex in Germany. And I was in Wildflicken, which is part of the Germany's infantry school.
Can you say that again?
Wildflicken.
Okay.
Wildflicken. Wild chicken, Wildflicken.
All right, I got it.
So I was there in, I think it was March of this year. And so I was with the Ukrainians and they were doing staff training, part of it. The Germans told me that they had only had one brigade through there, like one brigade staff. The rest of the time it's battalion and below. And I get it. You're fighting a high intensity conflict against the Russians right now. You can't just send your guys, especially the good guys, especially the guys that are, the heroes of Ukraine, the guys that are running these staffs, battalion and brigade commanders. You can't just send them for 3 weeks to Germany in the middle of a war.
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Okay, so here would be my counter
can't.
to that. Here would be my counter to that. A really good S3, S4, someone doing FUOPs and CUOPs are a combat multiplier versus one additional rifleman in a trench, right? I mean, the commander I get, like you don't want to pull the commander out of the field. I understand that, right? And frankly, you can train the staff and you don't need to pull the commander out of theater. Like I agree with that. If you have a good commander, they're a combat multiplier. But let's take a battalion staff. I mean, if you had just 5 people, you're 1, you're 2, you're 3, you're 4, right? Those 4 individuals properly trained, or even trained just a little bit to understand what their role is going to be such a combat multiplier versus 4 more guys with rifles, guys or gals with rifles shooting Russians, right? Like nobody, if you're that good with the weapon, then you don't need to be a staff officer. But we all know that some people are just better staff officers. That you get. My understanding is the average age of a Ukrainian soldier is 50 now. Is that right? Did it go down?
It's gone down. It started at about 46, and I think it's probably, at last I heard, and this is 6 months ago, it was 42. So
okay.
It was dropping. So it's probably 40, I'm guessing. The average age is 40.
We're the same age, even though you look significantly older. And so guys our age, like,
true
hey, you know what? you have some people that have been fighting there, but like maybe someone who's got a little more wear and tear, because a 50-year-old body's, can only run around in a trench for so long. Pulling that person out and getting them to be a properly trained staff, and I don't even mean properly trained, just understanding their role. If you take someone and say, look, all the logistics for this battle, that's on you. You're the one who, the logistics rose is pinned on your chest. Someone who's the one, hey, you're the one solely responsible for trying to replenish our forces and getting replacements. Like these are fundamental concepts, and nothing, like I said earlier, nothing in this war has changed the necessity of that. And I do want to make an argument for why the tank isn't dead.
Now, first we have to caveat everything that you say from here forward. You're an armor officer.
Complete bullshit. Complete bias. Complete bullshit. So
you are going to say that I won't put words in your mouth, but I think I know what you're going to say. Go ahead. Tell us, Joe.
Complete bullshit.
Is the tank dead?
Well, it's good that you're wearing glasses, because then people won't see the tears in your eyes at the brilliance of what I'm about to say.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Eric, this is exactly how we were as roommates.
Wow.
So I'm just gonna throw it to you.
Wow.
At West Point,
every day.
United States Military Academy, by the way.
This was every day.
So you know that.
All right. So
Point Friday.
All right. So a couple things. Take a look at this picture right here. So my formative years as a lieutenant in the Army back in the 90s, I was Op 4 at NTC, right? So it's all we did was large scale combat operation training.
90s or 80s?
90s. I'm not that old. So we had a saying, right, which is don't go to the blinking lights. And what that meant was if you're driving and you see a tank and the lights flashing, which means the tank is destroyed, don't go towards that tank. So looking at this picture right here, this is literally the opposite of that, right? So unless all, 7 of these vehicles were destroyed instantaneously, simultaneously, somebody at some point said, look, there's a blown up vehicle. Let me drive right towards it. So fundamentals of armored warfare is when you see a tank or a Bradley that is destroyed, something destroyed it, don't move towards it, because whatever destroyed it may destroy you. So just looking at that picture, seeing all of these vehicles piled together tells me that they were not doing something right. When I used to look at, I remember when you saw like the initial pictures of the Russian invasion, and we used to simulate Russian tactics, right? So we would travel in column, just like the Russians do, to simulate that. But then when we got in contact, we would spread out. What you would see in the pictures in the early parts of the war was all these little donuts right around the road. So in other words, column would get attacked and the tanks would just do donuts, right? Really what they're supposed to do is spread out as far as humanly possible, right? The M1 has a range of anywhere from 4 to 6 kilometers. Obviously it's harder to hit at 6 kilometers. So to have 2 vehicles where you could literally jump from one to the other, you're completely wasting the advantage. T-72, kilometer and a half, I get it. But like these Western tanks, that one of their big advantages is they shoot far. There is zero reason for them to be this close. So another phrase that we always used to hear was Americans, for those who don't know, you have JRTC and NTC. JRTC is a much more closed-in area. It's an infantry fight. You have armor there, and they always get their butts kicked, right? And in NTC, you have infantry.
It's that beautiful Fort Polk, Louisiana. I have to throw that.
Yes, beautiful Fort Polk,
I was stationed
Louisiana.
there. It was beautiful.
And NTC, you have these wide open deserts, and you have infantry there. And the infantry are like an afterthought. And anyone I would talk who would fight in JRTC, I don't know. Anybody that I would talk to at JRTC was like, the tank is useless. Anybody I talked to at NTC is, the infantry are useless. Now, they're both right and they're both wrong, meaning tanks are great in certain kinds of areas. Nobody who fought in Vietnam was like, man, what we really could have used was some M1s, right? No, depending on the battlefield that you're fighting in, tanks can be great or they can be utterly useless. And so you're talking about a battlefield where you have almost unlimited drone warfare, right? That can attack a tank from the top where the armor is thinnest. You have no air superiority to speak of. And so, yeah, you're absolutely like, is the Abrams tank in the battlefield in Ukraine not very useful? Sure, I will exceed that. But you're talking about a single battlefield under very specific conditions, right? So in the same way, we just watched Israel and Iran fight a 12-day war, right? Now, if I was a month earlier, you'd say drones are ruling the battlefield, right? Well, in the 12-day war, we got to see what good old-fashioned air superiority does. And, the Iranians were literally the ones who were sending the Russians all the drones. How much did the drones help them in that fight? Not at all, right? I mean, maybe a little, but if they did, I didn't hear it. And yet you literally have the country that's supplying Russia with its drones that are dominating the battlefield in Ukraine. And when the Israelis went to take out the Iranian nuclear facilities, drones weren't really part of the conversation, right?
But so we're talking apples and oranges, though. That's not a ground
exactly.
conflict.
No, you are absolutely making my point.
Oh my God! I just made your point.
Oranges.
Oh, geez.
Yes, thank you. See,
what am I doing?
When a student comes to you and they repeat the same thing back to you. But my point is, you are absolutely correct that in Ukraine, under the current operating conditions, the tank is not what it was meant to do.
Say it. The tank is dead in Ukraine. Say it. Say the words.
I'd say that the tank is on life support. Maybe I'll concede that.
All right, we'll go with that. Close enough.
Close enough. Under what circumstances are we talking? Just air support then? Under what circumstances?
No, but
under what circumstances would the tank shine in modern conflict? Given that we know drones exist.
Okay. Here's what I would say: that in a battle space where drones are the dominant weapon system, your tanks aren't very useful.
100%.
Now, the question is, would complete air superiority significantly negate drone dominance? We don't know, right? Like, let's be honest, we don't know.
How? What does air support have to do with a tiny quadcopter and a dude flying it out of a basement? What's air superiority have to do with that?
Here's where air superiority comes in. And we're talking air superiority because there is no air superiority in Ukraine right now.
Correct.
So the question is, would air superiority allow them to better target the launch locations for the drones, right? So I was listening in the Telegraph where the Ukrainians have said, you know what, let's not worry so much about the Russian drones, but the Russian pilots of the drones, right? So every one of those guys that we can take out, that's going to have more long-term benefit. If you gave me a drone right now and said, go blow up a tank, my kid probably could, but I would not be able to, right? And so if you had complete air superiority where you could significantly ID and take those out, right? Because let's face it, you can, like if you could drop a bunker buster and take out 5 or 6 drone pilots, right? And I don't mean the bunker busters they were using, but you know what I mean? Like certain munitions, air-to-ground munitions, that if you had free reign of the skies, I think it would diminish the abilities of drones to basically fly around unfettered on the battlefield. And if you got rid of that, if you were able to eliminate that condition, then I think, and not that armor is going to be dominant, right? Because now we've also seen what minefields do. But if you were able to eliminate the ubiquitous existence of drones everywhere, yes, then armor could play a larger role. But right now, you can't. Not when the drone can really only attack a tank from the top, and the tank's armor is weakest at the top. I mean, they were literally designed to be destroyed by drones. The Javelin missile system was designed with that in mind, where I'm going to shoot down on the top of the tank and I'm going to blow it up, right? So no, I don't think the tank is dead, but I do think in the current operating environment, it's not as helpful as we thought.
Mm-hmm. That's I think you're still soft selling it, saying it's not as useful as you thought. I still think you're in Egypt living in denial.
I think in the desert.
That's the first time.
I think if So that scenario, like if you were in urban warfare and you were trying to bomb these smart Russians, the pilots, you might be quasi successful in urban terrain because there's lots of places to hide. You can hide antenna. You can hide all the signatures of drone pilots and drones leaving. And I think that the Ukrainians or the Russians or whoever you're trying to suppress with air, they would just disperse because you see groupings of drone pilots. Even now, you see houses with the drone, 10 drone pilots or drone pilots and their accoutrement in that house. They would just disperse even more down to the single unit. And they wouldn't have so many drones. Like one house has 20 FPV drones all lined up on the floor, ready to go. You just disperse a little more. And so you wouldn't mass as much. So that would be a problem again for air superiority. But maybe in certain environments, like in the desert, like 73 Eastings or something like that, where are you going to hide? In a sand dune? Like where are you going to hide? In a wadi? You're not going to be able to hide an antenna, a drone pilot, the Mavic pilot, the mechanic that fixed a long range drone. You're not going to be able to hide any of that shit. So I think in very specific environs that you might be correct, that you might be able to suppress.
And think about it. Your drones have hit like almost a critical mass at this point, right? Mm-hmm. So
sure,
I will say that I will absolutely concede that in this. So even if one side gains air superiority, right? Like what we traditionally think of air dominance or air superiority. At this point, there's so many drones in the battle space, and they've been able to set up that you're not putting that genie back in the box. Yeah. But like you guys mentioned, in an urban environment, like guess what? Armor, completely useless in an urban environment, unless you just want to shoot buildings and take them down. Yeah. I would say that in this environment, like it seems like the Bradley is doing better than the M1, right? Because the suppressive fire of the 25 millimeter cannons, because they're both just as vulnerable to drones, but one's much better at taking out infantry, which is the dominant branch in the fight. So, I don't think if you told the Ukrainians, the Bradleys are useless, I think they'd probably disagree with you, right? In fact, I would guess they might want to trade all of their tanks for Bradleys, right?
I love Bradleys.
And we used to love the Bradleys. As a true armor guy, we had a joke where it was a picture of an M1 and it was, "This is your brain." And on the back, it was a Bradley and it was like, "This is your brain on drugs," right? So it's like, I'm a very anti-Bradley guy, But yeah, it's always, if the M1, which is 72 tons, you put it in an environment where there's no bridges, and it's also useless, right? And so,
is it 72 tons? Because I've been using
fully loaded. It's 72 tons.
Yeah,
my
Tony,
God.
You made an egregious error, bro.
Yes, and now they're talking about down armoring.
Up armoring.
I want to say up armor, but they're down armoring the top. Wouldn't that be down armoring? I'm just making that up.
Putting
armor on the top of the tank.
Yeah,
so how much is that going to? Oh my God, that thing's going to weigh 85 tons.
Now.
It's going to get like 0.4 miles to the gallon.
Well, and then the other thing is, I want to see an FPV drone hit an M1 going 40 miles an hour, right? So that's another.
You got dozens of videos of that.
Is it? Well, yeah.
That's
M1 going
M1s
fast.
have been whacked all over the battlefield.
Piece cake. If the M1 can go 80 miles an hour, it would have an okay chance because the FPV drone now is going 100 miles an hour. So, and that's with a 5-pound RPG 7 round.
Wow, that's crazy.
The M1 is not invulnerable. M1s have been whacked all over the battlefield.
You see these.
You're not going to get any disagreement from me. I mean, you get 3 feet of mud that you've taken out an M1. So, again, I think the problem that people have is that, after the Gulf War, after its limited use in Iraq, everybody thinks of the M1 as like this sort of invulnerable, perfect weapon system. As a tank versus other tanks, I'll take the M1 all day long, right? But you can't. It's like everything else. Like you stick an M1 in a city by itself, it's useless, right? Mm-hmm. And
Right.
so while it may be the best tank, that doesn't necessarily mean the tank is appropriate in every area and in every battlefield. Urban environments, you don't want a tank anywhere near it, right? This environment that's heavy in drone, I mean, you got two things that are anathema to the tank: heavy drones and heavy minefields, right? So those two things are pretty much the death knell. So, but I would, as Nagel had said to you, the mobile protected firepower as a concept will never go away. Period. Right?
Sure.
That will never go away.
You always want
Whether
that.
it looks
But
like
guess
an
what?
M1
I want a time machine too. There's certain things that we want. You can't always have that. You can't have mobile protected, firepower when as soon as you move, you're seen 20 kilometers, 25 kilometers, sometimes even more than that. There's no massing. There is no assembly area. There's none of that. You're just going. I'll meet you by the tree, and we'll all go in a column. And 10 kilometers later, we'll all die because very drone-directed artillery is going to stop us, and then FPV drones are going to fly in to finish us off. And that's how rinse and repeat in the Russian army, basically every day. So what you're implying, something you said, and what I'm getting from this, and I always say that we're not going to fight like this. The United States Army is not going to fight with Chinese drones. We're just not. We're not going to do this. But you're kind of saying that, hey, if we go in 82nd Airborne style and we just blitzkrieg the shit out of people, they're not going to have time to build 1 million drones where the density of drones to tank is 30 to 1 every kilometer. They're not going to have time to do that. Maybe over 3.5 years, they can build 1 million drones.
Well, okay. You just said something, and I'm going to throw up a little in my mouth for saying this, but you just said something brilliant, right? Which is,
thank you.
Which is,
I'll be here all week as well.
Don't give them the time to build up, right? So if you're a planner and you're planning a future warfare, the lesson you should learn from this is the longer it takes, the more drones the enemy is able to get, and the more it negates some of your best weapon systems, right? So the Paladin, the tank, all of those things, you got to go in, you got to hit them hard, you got to hit them quick, and by the time they get those drones out of the package, you're already overrunning them. Right. And so, that is absolutely something that should be taken from this, that if we get to the point where we're in attritional warfare, then drones will be dominant. But to your point, to hit that critical mass very early in the first couple of weeks, I would hope our plan is not to let it last more than a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. It's going to be tricky. But unfortunately, the other thing is they are where they are now. Right. And so, regardless of how they got there, this is where the war is at between Russia and Ukraine. And my argument is, at least from a structural standpoint, going beyond the weapon systems, back to my original point is you gotta be able to scale up that coordination. Right. That just has to happen. There's never a good reason why you don't need to be able to coordinate at a higher level. Right. And so you're going to be limited. What you're not going to do is have 5,000 infantry squads independently operating and take back the country. That's never going to happen. Right. That would have to be some sort of miracle.
Insurgency. You're talking about an insurgency there.
But where you have a war and there's a front, 5,000 platoons, 500 battalions all operating independently is never ever going to get you there, right? No matter how skilled they are, no matter how many Russians they kill, to Eric's point earlier, unless you can exploit actually you made the point, unless you can exploit the successes you have, and exploitation requires by definition a higher level of synchronization. Mm-hmm. And so what good is it, and look, I watch the videos, I see these, very rarely now of these columns of Russian mechanized forces just get slaughtered, and there's no exploitation of that. The exploitation has to come at a higher level. I'm fine with counterattacking if I know that the battalion is sending in another company behind me, right? But right now you don't know that. So you're a platoon, you successfully defeat a Russian advance, you're the platoon, you're there's a giant gap where they just came through, and we're going to push through it. Now, I'm doing that if I'm talking to the battalion commander and he's like, hey guys, I got a whole like 3rd Battalion's coming in right behind us, and they're going to get as far as you can, and then they're going to push in behind you. That's how we fight. If you're just like, well, we could push forward, and then we're just on an island by ourselves with our platoon, you're never going to exploit anything. So the lack of exploitation, which you guys had mentioned, that's mission command. You need that higher level of coordination.
It all makes me think, when I hear the word stalemate, I get so angry, because this is not a fucking stalemate. A stalemate would be Russia takes Avdiivka, and then Ukraine takes Bakhmut back. That give and take is a fucking stalemate. Not Russia continues to take land. Even, it doesn't matter how slowly they're taking it.
Yep.
Russia is winning the war by taking what used to be Ukrainian lands, and Ukraine not taking it back in a give and take manner.
They're not
be a
winning
stalemate.
through that. No, they're not.
I'll give you an analogy.
You're not even talking about attrition and casualties. That's a nonsensical statement.
How long can Russia do it? Forever?
No,
I mean, how long
they
can
cannot
Russia
do it.
go on?
They cannot do it forever. They haven't reached the point yet. It's not forever.
Avdiivka. Oh,
What? Oh, what is that?
Yes, about that.
Oh my God.
Pennsylvania is experiencing a statewide intermittent 911 outage. Oh, okay. There you go.
Wow.
My phone just told the
China.
bomb's on the Legion.
Guys, are we doing 2 hours today? This is a 2-hour podcast?
It is going
Yeah, I'm
pretty
sorry.
long.
I have a habit of talking a lot. So.
No,
I'm just
we haven't
asking.
even got to. We have to get. Okay, maybe we'll just cut it off there. I wanted to get your opinion on how long this is going to last. And Eric believes that the Russians can't do this forever. I think they can. I think they can do it a couple more million casualties.
That's not forever.
And slowly take.
That's not
Pokrovsk,
forever.
Take Tourette's.
Sure.
At
what cost?
Just keep going.
It works until it doesn't.
Tomorrow. They keep. At what cost? Who cares? The Kremlin doesn't care.
It does matter, right? It matters when they don't have the operational capability anymore. Of course, the Kremlin doesn't care. They're willing to sacrifice everybody. Eventually, your humans run out.
Okay.
I have an opinion on this. It may surprise you.
Yes, sir. Let's hear it.
Let's hear it.
So, Colonel Lolito that I mentioned earlier, she and I are working on an article right now which talks about, and I mentioned this to you, about gradual escalation, right? And it's all going to come down to which side is willing to endure more suffering, right? So I was
very close.
Well said.
Okay. So when I went to the information operations course, they asked me a question at the end, and they said, should kinetic war have an IO annex? And I said, war is IO with the kinetic annex. You win the war when the enemy is convinced they can't win. Now, sometimes you shoot people to help drive home the message, but all wars end when one side decides they can't win.
Correct.
Right? And so, and we could go here for another hour just on historical examples of that. So right now, if you are Russia, the only thing that's going to get you to stop is when you are convinced that you will not win this war, right? Now, the Ukraine may never, we talk a lot about their resiliency. And so I will tell you this, right? I can't predict, but what I will say is, if Russia ends up winning, it's because they were convinced that Europe would not endure the pain economically, militarily, industrial wise, to keep the fight up, and they just kept going till they won. Right? That would be, and I think we would all agree that makes sense in hindsight. On the other hand, if the Russians lose, right, it's because all of this bombing of the cities and blowing up schools and everything. Not only did it not have the effect of making the Ukrainians capitulate, but it entrenched them psychologically to such a degree that they were like, we are never surrendering. Like Winston Churchill will fight in the mountains, all that stuff, right? And so in hindsight, if Ukraine ends up winning, we're going to say, hey, all of these attacks on the cities, all of these missiles and bombings and hospitals, all it did was, excuse the language, piss them off to the point where they're like, I know. We are never going to surrender, right? And so but no side is going to fight until everyone is dead. It is almost unheard of in warfare.
That's never been
one
done.
side, one side never. I mean, other than Hannibal and the double envelopment, like very rarely have you ever even seen a battle where every single person is killed, right? So it's going to come down to one country comes to the conclusion that they cannot win. Now, which country will that be, and what do you do to convince them of it? Well, that's probably a whole other podcast, but that's how the war is going to end. And so if you want to know what's going to happen, how it's going to end, that's the question you got to ask yourself. Who's going to be convinced first?
I couldn't agree more.
And I hope it's the Russians, because the Russians are sheeple. So you really have to convince the oligarchs and the Siloviki and the Putins and those guys and the military. You have to convince them. A hard time convincing the Russian people that they give a shit about anything. So, I mean, you talk about the population, talk about Clausewitz. I think it's going to be a long war. I think we're settling into a nice, long 10-year war here, at least. Just getting started. Neither side that I could see thinks that they're going to lose this war. I don't think Putin thinks he's going to lose. I don't think
it's going to continue to be World War I type conflict with missiles.
Well, I think we're just settling in for a long war. Okay, we have to talk about this because I said last podcast we're going to talk about the RX-9 Hellfire Ginsu. Eric said he'd never heard of this. I know you've heard of this. It's just been a while. It's just been a while. And let me explain it. Let me share this video. And let me kind of explain while I'm sharing the video. It is it is a Hellfire missile. Normally a Hellfire missile blows things up or penetrates things with its copper plating plasma bullshit. Okay, it's very accurate. It can go through a window at 3 miles away because it has an articulating laser finder. As long as the MQ-9 Reaper is overhead and firing the laser beam on the target, that Hellfire will go right to where you put the laser. Literally laser accurate. Okay, here's a video. I'm going to share this. This is a video of what the Ginsu Hellfire is. The R9X Ginsu is actually take away the explosive, the warhead inside, and replace that with 6 long, like 2-foot long blades that uses purely kinetic energy to cut through the target, usually a human.
I like it.
So here's a video of the R9X Ninja or Ginsu cutting through a car. And this actually happened. So I'll just play this. Make it big. You got a car. Here comes the Hellfire. Opens up the blades. And hilarity ensues.
So you take
no
out the
collateral
passenger.
damage.
Take out the passenger. Okay.
Yeah, and here's a picture of it. Yeah, does a lot of damage.
So what is that a picture from? What is that?
I believe, I'm glad you asked, I believe that was Abu Khayr al-Masri. He was iced in 2017. He was arrested by the Iranians. In 2015, he was arrested by the Iranians, and we wanted to kill him, and we couldn't do it because he was in pound me in the butt Iranian prison. And then in 2017, they released him, which was nice of the Iranians to do, and we instantly killed him. Like as soon as he went home, he's like, "Hey, congratulations, welcome back."
That's
he was driving his car, and he got cut in half by a U.S. missile out of nowhere.
That is a clever munition.
Yeah.
Very clever.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Let's watch. We got to watch the video though. You got to see it in action. Okay. That's important. It's important to see this thing in action. Okay. Here's a video. And the title is something like, CENTCOM forces killed a senior military leader of an Al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria. So I'm going to share the video right now. Let's see it. This is kind of in black and white, but you'll get the point. I'll make it big. Make sure the sound's off. There's probably no sound. And you're just driving down the road, and they can see you like it's daytime.
Mind your own business.
And bam, you didn't even know it happened because there was no explosion.
Oh, that is clever.
It was that quick. Look, watch right here. bam. And it just has all the skid marks and the metal that it went through the car, and the metal is sticking in the ground, and that's where the sparks come from.
I'm impressed.
That guy is toast. One more video. I got to show this video, and then we'll be done because this one is a really good video of the Ginsu knife Hellfire missile. Like I said, hugely accurate. It can hit a moving target, a moving car in whatever seat you want to hit, as long as you keep that laser on it, because it has an articulating laser.
Would you also say bigly accurate?
It's very bigly accurate. Exactly. That's a perfect word for it. Okay, let's look at this. This is a great video. Might be my favorite Hellfire video of all time. This is from a CCTV video I'm showing. Cars driving down the street. Boom. And skid marks. The flame coming out that's from the swords hitting the concrete or the asphalt and making these flames behind the car. It's basically, and I'll play it again without the sound, but let's watch it one more time. It's like, boom. It's like that car's going back to the future. It's like Marty McFly and Dr. Brown are going back in time with the flux capacitor. That's what it looks like to me.
Dating yourself, bro. Just
1.21 gigawatts, Marty. Yes.
So you're in honor of your T-shirt that says America. That's
yes.
Only in the year 2025 can Americans kill their enemies with a sword from an F-35. Just saying.
Yeah. Do you think do you think it was an F-35 or do you think it was like a Predator?
I mean, it just sounds cool, right? Like we're killing people with swords launched from F-35.
Predator's not doing that.
What's the point? Like, why? I mean, do we care about that much about collateral damage that we develop?
No, absolutely.
Look, in all seriousness, if you know, I say in jest about killing with a sword, but like, if you can kill someone, right, because of the accuracy of the round, with no explosion whatsoever. I mean, I would not be surprised if now. Maybe if you're in the passenger side, things aren't going too well. But the point is, if you are in the front seat and you can kill that person and the other passenger may not even be hurt and anyone in the back, because think about it, right? A lot of these guys will drive around with their families, their kids in the back and everything else like that. And if you can kill them and the kids and everything, like nothing's going to happen to them. I mean, that's surgical. Amazing, right? It reduces the collateral damage because 100%. Here's what happens. You shoot that thing, you hit the car. What you won't see 2 days later is, there was like 37 people were killed in the explosion. It like hit a bus full of teachers with kids, and like none of that's going to happen because they're like, hey, this is a Ginsu missile. Like unless the blade like spun around and. And so the ability to take somebody out and there's no explosion where they can take a bunch of people and say, oh, look at all the people they killed. Someone's going to say, I don't understand how did the knife do that. This missile doesn't explode.
Yeah. Well, we killed al-Zawahiri July of 2022. If you remember, he was on his balcony having coffee in Kabul. Every morning, like every morning at 6:30, he went to go out on his balcony, and they developed a pattern of life for the leader of Al-Qaeda, basically after Osama bin Laden. For 3.5 months, they developed this pattern of life. I would be thinking he's such a high value target that I would just locate him in 3.5 minutes and then flatten that entire building, because yesterday, and Israel has this weapon. They have the Ginsu Hellfire. It has been documented that the IDF has access to the Ginsu Hellfire missile. Yesterday, in a long line of women and children, and apparently one bad guy, waiting at a food distribution center in Gaza, the Israelis killed 18 civilians. to get at one guy. And amongst those were a bunch of women and children that died. And the stories that the observers were telling of children being blown in half is just absolutely gruesome. So I guess military necessity, I don't know.
Yeah, you're being
I don't know what to
kind.
say about that.
Well, the Israelis simply don't value the lives of a Palestinian at all. Women, children, civilians, they are collateral damage
Military
to get to
necessity.
anyone.
Apparently that guy was involved in October 7th. Who knows? We will never know, maybe. I'm just saying the Ginsu Hellfire, maybe we overuse it because we can. It's kind of cool. I can think of other things that we use in the military that's kind of cool. You don't really need to have that. Do we really need to have an Apache helicopter? Maybe a Huey would be just as fine. I don't know. Anyways, Joe Junguzza, thank you. Thank you for
Great.
Oh, yes. Do the disclaimer. Sorry, we have to do the military disclaimer.
Yeah, you have
Very
to.
important. Go ahead, Joe. Send
All
it.
right, hang on. All right. The views expressed during this podcast are those of me and not necessarily those of the Army War College, the U.S. Army Reserve, the Department of the Army, or any other agency of the U.S. government.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, you're not associated with any of this in any official capacity whatsoever.
This is literally just my opinion.
I have pictures of Joe from college. I made him do the podcast. He is not associated with us. Anyways, this is great discussion.
Do you want to hear a funny? This probably won't make the.
No.
You want to hear a funny? No, I can't.
I want to hear it. I'm
going to cut this out. Whatever you say, I'm probably going to cut
I
out.
know you're going to cut it out. I just thought he'd appreciate it.
Go ahead.
I want to hear it.
So.
The Flash Traffic Podcast.